This is going to be a video on how I prepare sea moss. So normally it comes in a bag like this, where it's a little bit wet or whatever the case is. I personally like to put it in a brown paper bag like this so that I can dry it out like this. When it's dry like this, I feel like it's easier to get the salt out and some of the larger particles. Notice how much salt I just shook out of this one. I then place my sea moss into a bowl, such as this one. I go ahead and fill that bowl with water. Making sure there's enough water to cover the sea moss. Once the sea moss is sufficiently covered with water, I like to rinse it a few times to get as much salt and sediment out of it. After rinsing with water a few times, your sea moss will look like this. At this point, I'm going to fill with enough water to cover it and leave it overnight. I like to put a little bit of lemon juice in my sea moss to take out the scent of the ocean or the fresh smell, whatever you want to call it. Also, make sure you go through your sea moss and take out any weird looking things that could be seashells or seaweed or whatever the case is, such as this little thing right here that I found in there. I'll go ahead and add a few squirts of lemon juice now. If you have fresh lemons, even better. Your sea moss should double in size or expand overnight. So just let it sit. I like to cover it with a little bit of saran wrap or something, just to make sure nothing gets in it overnight while I'm sleeping. Tomorrow we'll check in on it and continue this process. Okay, so the next morning when you come back, your sea moss will look like this. This is approximately 8 to 12 hours later. What I'm going to do now is remove the saran wrap and rinse the sea moss one more time with some water. After rinsing my sea moss 3 to 4 times under lukewarm to cool water, I make sure I go through it once again, look for any weird little sediments, seaweeds, anything crazy floating around, take that out. I put enough water to cover the sea moss, as you can see here. Let's see, get this to focus. Yeah. Alright, so I put enough water to cover the sea moss. At which point, this is going to be the final water that I use to actually blend my sea moss. So, recapping from last night, I take the dried sea moss. If it's not dry, I like to dry it out, put it in a paper bag, let it sit. Then I rinse it, take out the salt, take out the sediment. After that, I put a little bit of lemon in it, just to get the fresh smell out. Then I put it in a bowl. I let it sit overnight with enough water to cover it. You see how much it expanded from last night? There was pretty much like a handful of sea moss that turned into this much. After this, what I'll do is go ahead and cover it again with the saran wrap. So this is my sea moss covered with saran wrap. About 8 to 12 hours later, so tomorrow, I should be blending it up and getting it ready for you. Also, one more thing, the amount of water that I put in is a ratio that makes sure that when I blend it, I get a nice consistency. I like mine to be not too thick. Also, if it's too thick and your blender isn't powerful enough, it's gonna bind your blender. It's not gonna be able to actually blend the sea moss. So it's gonna come out thick and lumpy. You want it to be smooth, so you wanna make sure you put an adequate amount of water into the bowl. Tomorrow, when I check it, the water should be a little bit slimy. That tells me that the sea moss is ready to go. Also, when you squeeze the sea moss, it should be able to crush between your fingers. It should be soft enough to, what do you call it? Crush up between your fingers, whatever. Alright, we'll see you tomorrow. Alright, after letting my sea moss sit here for a few days, letting it mellow out, do what it do, expand. Look how beautiful it's become. So now I'm ready to get it blended up and put it in my glass bowls for storage. So for my personal preference, I like to store my sea moss in glass bowls or a glass container because I feel like they don't absorb anything bad from plastic. Plastic usually has like BPA or something like that that they use to make it, and I prefer to store it in glass since it's a more pure item. It's no absorption, there's no parasitic like effects of it absorbing anything while it's sitting there. So I put it in glass bowls. Today I might be using 2 to 3 of them. Normally I just use this large one on the bottom because I prefer to just have one big batch and use from that. Also, I'm making a lot more sea moss than I normally use. Normally I use probably half of this, but because I'm making a larger batch, I have 3 bowls. My preferred tool is my Vitamix, which is this beautiful item right here. I put my sea moss into my Vitamix and blend it until it's smooth. Make sure you put enough liquid in there so it doesn't bind up. This is my sea moss ready to get blended up. If your blender isn't this big, you can always use half the portion, blend it, and then blend the other half later. Mine should be able to handle it. If it's too thick, I will take it out and use a smaller quantity. I like to start my blender on the lowest speed possible. So that's going to be 1. Let it just get adjusted, and then I tend to ramp it up a little bit. Stop it and check. See, right now I'm at this consistency, which is cool for me, but I want it a little bit smoother. After a few minutes of blending, you're left with this. Now I'm going to check the consistency of my sea moss. So for me, this is pretty much perfect. I don't need it to be any thicker than that. This is actually really, really good. After completely blending my sea moss, this is what I'm left with. Nice, smooth consistency. I'll probably leave this to drain for a few minutes, or grab a spatula and scrape it out, or just make a smoothie. This is the end of how I make my sea moss. Also, you can use sea moss in your soups, your smoothies, your sauces. The reason why I leave mine unflavored, I don't add any cinnamon, any lemon flavor, anything to it, is that way it's more versatile. I can use it in anything that I want, and it's not going to have a flavor of its own. By itself, it's neutral, and it blends with anything you want to put it with.